What's up, everybody? Emily Duplessis here in the Zero to Property Workshop. Welcome to another one of our videos in the self-managing module. We are going to be focusing on tenant screening, which is one of probably the most important aspects when it comes to self-managing your property, because this is really going to kind of make or break who you put into your property. So our main goal for this video is to learn how to screen tenants so that you get the best possible tenant in your property. So let's talk a little bit about tenant screening and why exactly it is so critical to making your life easier. Making sure that you take the time to screen your tenant up front is only going to help you get better tenants in your properties. And the better tenants that you have in your property, the less headaches you're going to have, no matter what it is, no matter if it's phone calls, late rent, calling for broken destruction of property. If you do your due diligence ahead of time, you're going to have, in most cases, less headaches. There are a number of things when it comes to tenant screening that you need to be checking on when a potential tenant applies to live in one of your properties. And so it isn't just, kind of like where they turn in an application and you skim it. Oh, they filled in all the blanks. Yeah, it's a go. They're in. No. You want to actually take that information and do something with it, right? You have to go if you really want to be and kind of take this seriously and make sure that you have the best experience you can have when it comes to self-managing your property. You're going to want to take action with that information. So I'm going to go over a handful of things that you should do whenever somebody turns in a rental application in order to do your due diligence. So the first thing that you need to do and should do is check their employment. So you should have a section in your application that asks about their current employment. You're going to now want to actually follow up with the employer that's listed in the application to verify, one, that the person works there, and two, to verify their salary, because you are also asking on your application what their gross monthly income is. And so you can verify that whenever you call and actually and verify their employment at that employer. And you shouldn't just do it for their current employer. If they list, a past employer on there, it wouldn't hurt to go ahead and make that phone call too, just to kind of see what type of employee they were. Why are they no longer there? Did they leave? Were they fired? What's the story? And I can tell you, from our own experience, one time we called an employer about somebody who filled out an application to live in one of our properties. And interestingly enough, the employer actually told us that he was planning on firing and laying this person off. And so had we not made that phone call, we wouldn't have known that in the coming week or two, this guy was actually going to lose his job, which inevitably could come back to hurt us as landlords of the property, because if he's lost his job, he is not making money, he can't pay his rent, right? And so, the employer asked us to not say anything and, if we chose not to rent to him, don't tell him why, if that's one of the main reasons. But that was a huge, important piece of information that we needed to know about that potential tenant to, again, save ourselves down the road. Because a month or two into that, had he lost his job, we probably wouldn't have been getting our checks, and we would have then been losing money. All right, number two, you should go ahead and run a debt to income qualifying ratio. So, similar to what we talked about way back in module 2 with financing and how banks are going to look at, your debts versus your income, and they're going to run that qualifying ratio. It doesn't hurt for you to actually do this with your tenants. This will actually help you to see if a potential tenant may actually be stretching their finances too thin. So, you ask for some of their debts on there, if they have car payments or credit card debt and what they're paying, you can quickly just kind of add up what you see on there and in terms of debts, run that against their income and kind of see where they are. Remember, the big number with the DTI ratio back in module 2 was 45%. Banks, when they're looking to rent, don't want to see that your debts are any higher than 45% of your gross income. And you don't have to keep that 45% as kind of your number here, but at least it kind of gives you an idea of the financial picture of the tenant or the potential tenant that's applying to live there. If you kind of add up all of their debts, and then you yourself kind of take into consideration, okay, well, that doesn't include groceries and utilities and those sorts of things, and you kind of take a look at that whole picture and you see that, 60%, 70% of their income is going to just be spent on living expenses and their debts and things like that, that doesn't leave them very much, right? And so it may be stretching themselves too thin, and you may want to double think actually renting to them. So it doesn't hurt while it's not required and you don't really, you gather this information through the application. It doesn't hurt to run that DTI qualifying ratio, if anything, just to kind of give you a better financial picture of your potential tenant. Number 3, credit checks. Assuming they authorize this in the application, which we had mentioned in the application video, there should be a signature page where they're authorizing this to happen. You should run a credit check to check out their outstanding debts, their payment history, and any judgments they may have on their credit. Now, I can tell you at time of this recording, we are in the process of evicting a tenant right now. And, one of the things the courthouse told us was if he doesn't pay in 30 days or so, that we can then put a judgment against his credit. So then that would show up. So if a tenant has ever been evicted, you might see that sort of judgment on their credit. And that's going to be really good information for you. Plus, it's going to give you a payment history in terms of how they pay. Are they paying late? Are they paying on time? And so again, running credit checks is something that you definitely should do whenever you're doing your tenant screening. And there are a lot of great softwares out there where you can do this right on there. One of the softwares that we use for our bookkeeping is TrueRent here with our rental portfolio. And on that software, there is a tenant screening section where I actually just hop in and I input, potential tenants' email addresses, some of their basic contact information, and then it sends them a link and they actually, pay for the reports to be filed, and then all of the information that comes out of the reports comes to me, and it's all handled on that software. So it's super easy. Like I said, there's a lot of software out there. I'm going to talk about some software at the end of this, but tenant screening can be super easy if you use the resources that are out there for you. Number 4, eviction reports. This is also another one of the reports that is run by the software that we use. An eviction report is going to verify whether a tenant has actually ever been evicted from a property. You may ask them this on an application, but it's pretty easy to lie on a tenant application, right? If you don't follow up with it, somebody might actually think that they're getting one by you. But if you follow up, you run the credit report, it might show up on there if they had a judgment, or you run an eviction report, which again, you can do on these softwares. You're going to definitely verify what the potential tenant has to say. And if you haven't caught that mantra throughout this entire course, that comes to fruition here as well. Trust, but verify. We talked about this back in Module 5. You can trust what they're going to say, but at the end of the day, it's your property and your money. So you need to verify everything that they're telling you in their application. Number 5, criminal background checks. You're going to want to see any kind of criminal history that a potential tenant may have. And there are a couple ways that you can go about doing this. Again, some of the property management softwares that are out there will do it. I can tell you our TrueRent software that we use runs all 3, credit report, eviction report, and a criminal background check. But we also, before I started using this software, I would just look it up myself. I did a little bit of research to kind of find out the local or state court system website. That's all public record. Anytime, they have any kind of criminal cases or things against them, that's public record. So I found it for my local area. I jumped on, I'd put in their name, and it would pop up if they had parking tickets or, civil stuff along with criminal issues. We had a tenant one time actually who applied. And when we pulled up his name here, he had been, there was a case pending on him, or I can't remember if it had been pending or if he was in the middle of it, but for some sexual abuse. And so, automatically red flag for us. We saw that and we were kind of, and I believe it was against a child. And so, we absolutely called and asked, we found this, explain yourself, basically. And so, again, it's just giving you a better overall picture. Here, we're not necessarily talking about the financial picture of a tenant. We're talking about the character of a tenant. And so you're definitely going to want to run those criminal background checks. And again, those can be free. You don't have to pay money for those. You just have to put a little sweat equity into doing a little bit of research online to find your kind of local court system where you can look that stuff up. But I highly recommend doing that because, again, it's just going to give you a better idea of the type of person that you are putting your property and your investment into the hands of. All right, number 6, call references. Yes, you have them list references on the application. Your job, like I've said before, is to actually make that phone call. So take the information and take action. Take a couple of minutes to call, find out more information into your potential tenant. The more information you can gather on them to get an overall picture of who they are, the better your life is going to be. So if you ask them to list references on there, make sure that you actually call them. And number 7, pay attention. When you show a property, right? So you schedule your showings, your tenants come or potential tenants come, even when you're corresponding, whether it's via email, via text, via phone, pay attention. I'm just going to say you can learn a lot about a person by doing this, right? So when we meet a potential tenant, right, we just kind of pay attention to their car. We might peek in and see, how do they keep their car? Is it, filled with a bunch of junk and crap and dirty and stuff? Or is it very clean? How are they on time? Are they not on time? If they're sending text messages, how are those text messages coming across? Are they, taking the time to make sure that they're using nice, proper grammar and punctuation and those sorts of things? I'm not saying at all that we don't rent to people because they sent us a text message that had slang in it. That's not the case at all. But again, it just helps to pay attention, right? Maybe you'd set up a time to chat at 3 o'clock and that you call, or they're supposed to call you at 3, they don't call you till 3:30, right? That gives you a little bit of indication on how they are in terms of respecting people's time, right? So just little things like that. I don't think this one is a make or break. So I don't necessarily think that things that you see here, good or bad, should make or break whether or not you rent a property to a tenant. But I do think that you can get a little bit of information and insight, unspoken insight, into somebody by simply paying attention. Now, one of the major things that you need to think about is that you have the right to know this stuff. Now, again, it's not being invasive. It is your property. It is your money that is at hand here. So don't ever feel that you don't have the right to know or the right to question, because you do when it comes to tenant screening. It all comes down to protecting yourself. And again, although it may feel invasive, you want to make sure that you're finding out as much information as possible about the potential person or persons that you're going to be renting your property to. And again, why? Because it's your property and it's your money, right? It's your future. It's your financial freedom. So take it seriously. Put in a little bit of extra time in the beginning when it comes to tenant screening, and it's going to pay off dividends in the end. That I can't stress to you enough. So, on that note, we have some resources for you from this video. We actually have a checklist for you, a 7 tips for tenant screening. So you can download it either from the bonus page or you can head over to our all access area. That's where you can download any and all checklists and resources that we talk about here on any of the modules or videos in the Zero to Property course. Recommended softwares. If you head on over to the access area, there we actually have links to some of the softwares that are out there that either we recommend or that people from our community that we've talked to before recommend. So there are property management softwares out there. Like I mentioned, we use TrueRent. That's a great one. Buildium is a really popular one that a lot of people use. Cozy is another pretty popular one. We get some of our leases from LegalZoom. Easy Landlord Forms is another great resource and software for you to check out when it comes to, self-managing generally. So in our all access area, we have links to some of those different softwares. So you can head on over there, click on the link, and that will take you to the various places. And I do recommend that you take some time and kind of pick out which one's right for you. A lot of them offer a lot of the same things. You've just got to figure out which one's going to be the best for you, maybe which one's the most user-friendly for you. And that's going to, again, really kind of help you in terms of saving time and being efficient when it comes to self-managing your property. So thanks again for tuning into this video all about tenant screening. We will see you in the next video where we're going to be talking about leases. Until next time, happy investing.